around the accident.
And I can release the grief.
I can release the grief
From my body.
from my body
And my mind.
and my mind.
I can release the grief.
To bring something into your energy system and the energy field, to tap on it, you simply imagine it as vividly as you can. You want to create an image of it in your mind. You want to imagine feeling it, being there. It's not very complicated. If it's something that's worrying you, you usually can imagine it pretty quickly.
A monster. I was a monster. And when I came back from Vietnam, I was waiting for that monster to erupt. And I was afraid that I couldn't control him, because I knew what I could do. I knew what I was capable of doing, and that was killing people.
For many people, this may be the first time that you're honest about what you're feeling. But once you do, you'll feel it in your body.
You know, they're a son, a father, a brother,
Right.
you know.
Even though
there's
no more life in those
there's
bodies.
no more life in those bodies.
Even though my mother's anger is in my back, I deeply and completely accept myself anyway. Even though what happened 2 years ago is still showing up in my knee. And it's a wonderful way to clear that emotionally.
He did scare me.
He did scare me.
He scared me.
Whether he wanted to or not.
Whether he wanted to or
He
not.
scared me.
He scared
me. He scared me. That I might not walk.
That I might not walk.
I've worked so hard
I've worked very
to get
hard
what I have.
to get what I have.
And he took it away.
Your emotional system is meant to be a guidance system to guide you in your life path, that when you're on the path, you feel good. When you're veering off, that's a feedback system to say, not such a good choice.
Whenever we have an emotion, positive or negative, it sends signals chemically to our body. So it releases this series of reactions in our vascular system, in our respiratory system, in our endocrine system. So they're always affecting us.
If you're stressing yourself with those thoughts, your body has no way of telling if there's an actual threat from out there, an objective threat, or whether this image of a threat, your boss or your wife or your child or whatever memory you have, this thing that you're generating within your own head.
When you are stressed, it puts out adrenaline, puts out cortisone, puts out blood sugar, raises the need for insulin, and so the whole body is physiologically stressed.
If something flares up, if you suddenly get, ooh, that hip pain or that head pain, we want that because that means that emotional issue is contributing to it. So like John, if you go home and suddenly you get the knee or the back, you think, oh, whoa, what's happened? Well, what are you thinking about? Okay. What's the topic of that hour? What just happened? Who just called? So it's great information. If suddenly, Dennis, you're having a craving and you think that's unusual, well, what just happened? Who'd you just run into?
So many times I'm like, oh, I wish someone would just come and take some of this weight, you know, to take some of this burden off me. And felt despair because I felt like there really wasn't anyone to come and relieve some of it.
Once you address the underlying emotional contributions, then physical changes occur.
This was a soulmate that I lost, and you know, learning to work with that is still, like I said, a long process there.
The unconscious, it's there to protect us from any kind of pain, and it gets in the way because we can't seem to peel all the layers off that we want to peel off, and what happens is that we kind of get stuck.
I think grief is maybe the hardest thing to put into perspective for people. We've done it with accidents and trauma and all sorts of other issues. However, I think grief is a bit more complicated.
I've worked with people who had grief for family members or close people that they'd lost in accidents. And of course that's coupled with shock. That's coupled with the pain of thinking of the person being hurt.
This was Raquel's 37th birthday, if you can see that right. She put 36. She lied to me about her age. And this was back in '04. This was in Universal Studios, Islands of Adventure, the Jurassic Park section of the park. This was in her old home in Tennessee back in '05. This was her at Chuck E. Cheese. This is the last Christmas, '06. Over here, we have more pictures of us at Great Adventures. This is where we were going the day she died.
I'd like you to run the event in your mind and let me know if anything kind of sticks on you, like you kind of stop there and feel some intensity.
July 31st, this year, of course, 2007. It was a beautiful sunny day. It was very hot. No, we were driving. It was just fine. The drive was just fine until we crossed the George Washington Bridge, you know, heading over toward New Jersey. And that's when the accident took place. About 5 minutes from the bridge, we were cut off by a truck that was pulling off from his shoulder.
You just, from the time that you're riding the car to when the truck pulls out and everything else.
What you want to do is break it down into pieces, because that's how we learn and that's how it's recorded in our body. So maybe someone will say, I feel guilty about what? I didn't put my blinker on.
What details do you remember, and make it in your mind like a movie. And run that movie in your mind and see, as you run it in your mind, see which details make you just sort of shiver and tighten up inside. You'll know.
We're driving down the highway. Everything's fine. We crossed the George Washington Bridge into New Jersey. We're doing normal speed.
What you talking about?
Us driving over to Six Flags Great Adventures in my van. Everything is well. Everything seemed well, you know. But we noticed a lot of trucks were, you know, parked alongside the shoulder.
I've seen this movie so many times. It was a terrible movie to begin with.
It's a terrible movie to begin with.
This is the last showing. I need to let it go.
I need to let it go.
I have my reasons.
My reasons.
What came up for you there?
A memory of her face.
Every time we want to go to a place better than where we are, there are blocks inside that have stopped us, or we'd already be there. And these blocks seem to come from where I had an experience that I didn't complete.
How much anxiety is anyone else feeling? 10, okay. You're a 9? Is it okay to continue?
I noticed that the truck was on top of us as I was switching lanes. He was switching his lane.
So picture you noticing that vehicle. All right? You're switching lanes. Switching lanes. Is there any regret about switching lanes?
I wish I never did it.
Okay. How strong does that feel? It's true, right? You
It's
wish you'd
true,
never done
I
it.
wish I'd never
But where
done it.
is there an emotional pain around the wish that I never did it?
I feel it in my heart. I feel like I should have just stood in the middle lane and, you know, just kept going. And then switched at some other stage. But
I shoulda.
I shoulda.
I shoulda. 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 Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda. I feel, you know, God, why didn't you take, you know, you take me? She has 6 kids, for the love of Christ. You know, 6 kids. I noticed that the truck was on top of us as I was switching lanes. He was switching his lane.
And what came out of your mouth?
Oh my God.
Did it come out that way?
No.
How strong of an oh my God?
Oh my God!
Keep tapping. What are you feeling? Anger? Oh my God. Yes, oh my God. 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 Oh my God.
I have people tell me, you know, clients of mine will say, I don't want to not miss that person. I really, this was somebody so important. I don't want to get over that. I want to honor them. And in fact, you will not get over that caring and the importance of the person at all. It doesn't erase the memory of the person.
When that happens, when those memories or those thoughts, the pieces of wisdom or insight that occur to us while we're tapping, when they rise to the surface and we become aware of them, it opens the door for healing. It opens the door for self-love, and that's the key to everything.
It calms you so you can think more clearly about your problem. It's almost like if there's a forest. You can't see the forest through the trees because there's just so many issues around something.
There's a sense of excitement to uncover these things, and there's a sense of just overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed because there's so many issues, and it's so hard for me to recall different things that happened when I was 10 or 5, or I got to connect here, and it's hard.
Psychologists tell us that 70% or more of our thoughts as conventional people are negative and limit our abilities and take away our powers, which essentially they do.
Most of these issues, not all of them, but most of them, and actually, you know, almost every issue has a root somewhere in early childhood.
So if something happens with a child, that the child feels terror, if that's what fear is, or neglected and abandoned, it sets a pattern.
There's so many little events that happen to kids that, you know, we as adults hopefully wouldn't think of, but that are traumatic for a child. Every kid has the potential to do remarkable things, to be an Edison, to be a Martin Luther King Jr., to be, you know, a Wright brother, to do all these things in all areas of life. But they're shut down from all of these little experiences that happened where they, you know, where they're told that they weren't good enough or they just decided. How many great ideas are lost? How many advancements in humanity are lost because of things like that?
You know, I wonder, why do I always have to be perfect? Why would I do that to myself? It's a punishment, obviously.
Are you punishing yourself or protecting yourself? Perfectionism is usually about protection, but it doesn't have to be.
You know, I went right back to being a kid again when you went through that whole process. I mean, this got to be going back to when I'm a child. Okay. This has to be when that starts, is when I was so young.
Tell us the incident. Okay, so she says it hasn't changed. What's going on is that she went back to a specific, only what you feel comfortable talking about, but an incident where you learned, oh, I got to be perfect or else look what could happen. There's some important incidents that's driving this, and there could be 50 incidents, but there's one that you could think of and bring up and talk about, only what you feel comfortable talking about, that would drive this.
It has to do with trying to be seen by my father and remembering he'd go away for weeks at a time because he was a salesman. And then when he came home, we'd all get excited and run out there, you know, because we wanted to see him. And he would just ignore me, but he would go get my sister and pick her up.
Okay.
And I would just sit there going, why not me?
Okay. How intense?
That's intense.
Okay. What is it? Hurt? Sadness?
Hurt.
Okay.
Kids are really, 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 really open. You know, when they're really young, they don't know anything but what you teach them.
Our first 6 years, we're not actually engaging in consciousness, we're just downloading experiences. Well, these experiences, then we play them back as our life characters and our life behaviors. Yeah, but you downloaded them from other people, so that you download your parents' behaviors